What if I told you that pursuing your own purpose might be the most dangerous thing you've ever done? Not dangerous in the way society warns you about, but dangerous in a way that could shatter your entire sense of self. Right now, millions of people are following the modern gospel. Create your own meaning, be your own God, design your life. But here's what they don't tell you, and what Machiavelli knew 500 years ago. When you become the architect of your own destiny, you also become responsible for every single consequence that follows. Think about it. When you had external rules, external purposes, external authorities telling you what to do, who was to blame when things went wrong? Them, right? Your parents, society, your boss, the system. But what happens when you become the system? What happens when there's no one left to blame but the person staring back at you in the mirror? What happens when every failure, every wrong turn, every moment of emptiness becomes a direct reflection of your choices, your vision, your inadequacy? This is the paradox Machiavelli understood that modern self-help gurus conveniently ignore. Absolute freedom means absolute responsibility. And most people aren't ready for that weight. Are you? We've been sold a lie. A beautiful, seductive lie that sounds like freedom but feels like prison. The modern world has packaged self-determination like a Disney movie. All sunshine, rainbows, and follow your dreams. But what they don't show you is the psychological carnage left behind by people who bought into this romantic fantasy. Here's the brutal truth. When you're told to create your own purpose, you're essentially being handed a blank canvas and told to paint a masterpiece, with no training, no guidance, and everyone watching to judge your work. Sounds liberating? Try terrifying. Think about your grandparents for a moment. Did they spend sleepless nights wondering about their life purpose? Did they have existential crises about whether they were living authentically? Probably not. Why? Because their purposes were largely predetermined. Family, community, survival, duty. And here's the kicker. They were often happier. But we've dismantled those structures. We've torn down the scaffolding that previous generations used to build their lives. And now we stand in the rubble, holding a self-help book, wondering why we feel so lost. The modern epidemic of anxiety isn't just about social media or economic uncertainty. It's about the crushing weight of infinite choice. When everything is possible, nothing feels necessary. When you can be anything, you become paralyzed by the fear of being the wrong thing. So ask yourself, when you're lying awake at 3 a.m. questioning every decision you've made, is that freedom? Or is that the price of playing God with your own existence? The ancient Greeks had a word for this: hubris, the dangerous pride that comes from thinking you can transcend human limitations. And Machiavelli, he saw exactly where this leads. Niccolò Machiavelli understood something about human nature that we've conveniently forgotten. Most people cannot handle absolute power over their own lives. In The Prince, Machiavelli wrote about rulers who had to navigate between virtù, their own skill and character, and fortuna, the unpredictable forces of fate. But here's what's chilling. He believed that when people gain complete control over their destiny, they inevitably corrupt themselves. Why? Because humans are fundamentally self-deceptive creatures. Think about it. When you're the prince of your own life, who's going to tell you that your decisions are wrong? Who's going to challenge your vision when you've surrounded yourself with the echo chamber of your own thoughts? Machiavelli knew that power without external checks always leads to delusion. He observed that successful rulers needed advisors who could speak brutal truths. But when you're creating your own purpose, you become both the ruler and the advisor. You're essentially asking yourself to be objective about yourself. See the problem? Machiavelli also understood that humans have a dangerous tendency to rewrite history to make themselves the hero. When you're crafting your own narrative, every failure becomes a learning experience. Every mistake becomes part of the journey. Every selfish decision becomes self-care. But what if, and stay with me here, what if some of your failures are just failures? What if some of your choices are genuinely wrong? What if your authentic self is actually just your ego wearing a spiritual mask? If this is hitting different than what you expected, hit that like button, because we're about to go even deeper into territory that most self-help gurus won't touch. And subscribe, Because understanding Machiavelli's warning might be the most important thing you do for your psychological health this year. The question isn't whether you can create your own purpose. The question is, are you psychologically equipped to handle the consequences when that purpose leads you astray? Here's what happens when you become the god of your own universe. You start believing your own mythology. The moment you decide that you're the ultimate authority on your life's direction, something sinister begins to unfold in your psyche. You develop what psychologists call confirmation bias on steroids. Every piece of evidence that supports your chosen path becomes gospel, while anything that contradicts it gets dismissed as negativity or limiting beliefs. But let's talk about the real psychological carnage that nobody mentions in those motivational Instagram posts. First, there's the narcissism disguised as self-development. When you're constantly focused on designing your best life and manifesting your dreams, you become the center of your own universe. Every conversation becomes about your journey, your growth, your breakthroughs. You start seeing other people as either supporters of your vision or obstacles to overcome. Then comes the responsibility trap, what I call infinite accountability syndrome. And when everything in your life is supposedly your creation, every negative outcome becomes a personal failure. Your relationship fails? You didn't manifest love properly. Your business struggles? You didn't have enough belief? Your mental health suffers? You're not practicing enough gratitude. This creates a psychological prison where you're simultaneously all-powerful and completely at fault for everything that goes wrong. But here's the most dangerous part: the paralysis of infinite possibilities. When you can theoretically become anything, do anything, create any purpose, how do you choose? Analysis paralysis sets in. You spend more time planning your perfect life than actually living any life at all. And the cruelest irony? The more options you have, the less satisfied you become with whatever you choose. Psychologists call this the paradox of choice, but when applied to life purpose, it becomes existential torture. So tell me, when did having unlimited freedom start feeling like unlimited pressure? When did being your own god start feeling like being your own prisoner? Follow your passion. Be authentic. Listen to your inner voice. What if I told you that this advice, the foundation of modern self-help culture, might be the most destructive guidance you could possibly follow? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your authentic self might be a complete disaster. Think about it. That voice inside your head telling you what you really want? It's the same voice that wants to eat ice cream for breakfast, avoid difficult conversations, and binge-watch Netflix instead of working on your goals. It's the same voice that holds grudges, makes excuses, and chooses comfort over growth. But we've been conditioned to treat this voice like some kind of spiritual GPS system, as if our impulses are somehow divinely inspired. Machiavelli would have laughed at this notion. He understood that human nature, left unchecked, tends towards self-destruction. The brutal reality is that following your passion often means following your ego. And your ego doesn't want what's best for you. It wants what feels good right now. Here's a question that will make you uncomfortable. How do you know the difference between genuine intuition and sophisticated self-deception? How do you distinguish between authentic calling and elaborate rationalization for doing what you want instead of what you need? The modern obsession with authenticity has created a generation of people who mistake their neuroses for their nature, their wounds for their wisdom, their preferences for their purpose. If you're starting to question everything you thought you knew about finding yourself, smash that subscribe button, because we're about to reveal the way out of this psychological maze. Hit like if you're ready to face some uncomfortable truths about the difference between being authentic and being honest. Real authenticity isn't about following every impulse or honoring every feeling. It's about having the courage to question whether your true self is actually worth following. Sometimes the most authentic thing you can do is admit that your authentic self needs serious work. So here's the million-dollar question. What if the path to genuine fulfillment requires you to become someone you're not yet? So here we are, at the edge of the abyss. You've seen the dangers, felt the weight, understood Machiavelli's warning. But I'm not here to leave you paralyzed by existential dread. I'm here to show you the way through. The paradox isn't meant to be solved. It's meant to be navigated with wisdom. Here's what Machiavelli understood that modern self-help culture refuses to acknowledge. True power comes not from unlimited freedom, but from intelligent constraints. The most successful princes weren't those who could do anything. They were those who chose their limitations wisely. So how do you create your own purpose without falling into the psychological traps we've explored? First, embrace external accountability. Find mentors, advisors, even critics who can see your blind spots. Machiavelli's princes needed counselors who could speak uncomfortable truths. You need the same. Your purpose shouldn't be created in isolation. It should be forged in the fire of honest feedback. Second, distinguish between purpose and preference. Your purpose isn't what feels good. It's what creates value beyond yourself. It's not about following your passion. It's about developing the discipline to serve something greater than your immediate desires. Third, accept that you will fail, and that failure doesn't invalidate your entire journey. Machiavelli knew that fortuna, unpredictable fate, would always play a role. Your job isn't to control everything. It's to respond wisely to what you cannot control. But here's the final, most important truth. The very fact that you've made it this far, that you've wrestled with these uncomfortable questions instead of seeking easy answers, proves that you might actually be ready for the responsibility of self-determination. Drop the word responsibility in the comments if you're ready to embrace the weight of creating your own purpose, not as a burden, but as the ultimate expression of human dignity. You've journeyed through the darkness with me, and that takes courage most people don't possess. The question isn't whether you should create your own purpose. The question is, will you do it with the wisdom to handle the consequences, the humility to seek guidance, and the strength to bear the weight of true freedom? Because that, my friend, is what separates the princes from the pretenders.